Hey, welcome to Creative Block. We're your host, Gene.
And V, we interview people in the animation industry about their life, work, and hobbies while we doodle jam.
We asked people on Twitter if they had specific topics they wanted us to discuss, as well as some drawing prompts.
And today with us, we have Carl Greenblatt.
Hey,
Hey!
Carl.
Hello.
Also known as CH Greenblatt, professionally.
True.
Yes.
How come you had the sort of pen name CH?
I started doing that in college when I was making comic strips because I liked the look of it. I liked like DB Trudeau.
Yeah.
And I just thought, I got such a long last name already that it would be cool to just sort of just have a couple initials, which those are just my initials. So
Sure.
yeah, I started using it when I was doing comics in college, and I just kind of kept up with it because I just like the look of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does. Yeah, it definitely has that like comic artist kind of feel. So I get it.
Yeah. But I've never made anyone call me by that. So it's not like,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's literally just like the screen name, but it's not anything I have ever gone by.
I've been calling you that this whole time.
Okay, so you're not offended I called you Carl.
No. That's what you should do. Please.
I'm gonna start calling you CH.
Yeah.
Whoops. That backfired.
When people have done that, I'm always like, what?
Yeah.
It's weird.
This is CH. This is the showrunner. Well, thanks for coming on the show. Really happy to have you.
Happy to be here.
I've been a fan of yours since back in Chowder days, and I was really honored to work on Jellystone, which is your most recent project. And you've had a long career. You got an interesting story because you kind of started outside of animation, and then in a roundabout way, kind of ended up working in animation. And we'd love to hear about that. But let's take it back. Let's take it back to baby Carl. Tell us about your early days and kind of how you first realized you wanted to work in cartoons or art.
I guess it basically was just I was a child enamored with TV, and this is for all the people listening before the internet.
Yeah.
When you just would watch whatever the heck was on, and so I pretty much just watched everything.
Mm-hmm.
I loved animation. I loved sitcoms. I liked goofy stuff. And I think I just absorbed a ton of it. But I pretty much watched any cartoons I could get my hands on at that time. And I just watched and rewatched and rewatched. There's so many old Looney Tunes. And I would really pay attention to like who directed them. You start to have your favorite directors,
Right.
your favorite like eras of cartoons.
Mm-hmm.
Which were for you?
I was a Chuck Jones fan when I was really young. I really just connected to those. There's something about them that I really liked, the timing and the snappiness of them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like I did like the Clampett stuff, but that was almost like so out there for me that I think I connected a little bit more to the Chuck Jones.
Mm-hmm.
And then I kind of knew like the McKimson stuff was like the Saturday morning, like that one's okay.
Yeah.
Like they're fine, but
Yeah.
they weren't my favorites. And then Tex Avery cartoons I really liked. Watched a lot of the old MGM cartoons. I watched a lot of old Harvey cartoons. They'd have Little Lulu and Baby Huey and Casper and stuff like that. There was just pretty, like I said, and then just action cartoons, G.I. Joe and Transformers, and I was a child of the 70s and 80s, so that's the stuff that I really just kind of sucked up. And in a lot of the Hanna-Barbera stuff, I loved Grape Ape and Captain Caveman and Blue Falcon and a lot of those cartoons.
Yeah. You're definitely well versed in Hanna-Barbera cartoons.
Yeah, it's just like I said, I would just watch everything, and for me that was, like I said, a lot of old sitcoms as well. I really liked like Bewitched and the Dick Van Dyke Show and F Troop and Gilligan's Island and just whatever garbage was on, I would watch. So really, I didn't think of animation as a career, but I liked cartooning, and so I would just draw cartoons. Pretty much in the evenings, I just sit at my desk and just, make little characters, draw my own cartoon strips, bring them into school, show my friends. And that was kind of how I started to learn to kind of write and parse out jokes and things like that. And then that carried into college. I did a comic strip every week. Not every week, but every day there was a daily paper at the University of Texas at Austin. And I did a comic for like 3 years. And that was really, really fun because it let me practice writing. It let me practice kind of like cranking out stuff. You sort of just have to get used to being fast and getting something done and turning it in and doing the next day and doing the next day and doing the next day. And part of what I really liked about that is you can't be precious about your work. You sort of have to just do it, move on, do it, move on. You can't overthink it. You can't just like stew in it, and you have to like think about the overall effect of.
It's a good thing to learn.
It is. It's like, well, is it? Are the characters fun? Is the world fun? Is the sensibility fun?
Right.
Maybe this joke doesn't land. All right, tomorrow will be better, and you hope that the net sum is more interesting than any one joke. And I think that served me really well going into TV animation.
Yeah, I always say that for webcomics too, that it's a good place to it's a good thing to do when you're just trying to learn how to draw or tell stories, because if you get on a schedule and you stick to it, that's a good place to just grind.
Oh yeah, because you did it for 3 years straight, like every day.
Yeah,
I mean, yeah,
and you're gonna get good. You're gonna get good really fast.
Well, if anything, it just lets you. It's practice.
Yeah,
and that's
practice.
And it's interesting. People always talk to me. They're like, "Well, how do I get better?" I'm like, "Well, I would say well, if you wanted to play guitar, you wouldn't get upset that you suck at it right away.
Right.
You'd have to sit and practice finger movements. You'd have to practice chords. You'd have to strum. You'd have to work at it, for a long time. Build up your finger strength. You'd have to do all this stuff. You can't just be upset that you're not an amazing guitarist right out of the gate. So why would you be upset that you're not an amazing artist right out of the gate?
Yeah,
I think it's like sports too.
Yeah.
I think also saying I like comparing it to I don't know, weightlifting or whatever, because it's so visual. It's you start out with no muscles, and the more you do it, the stronger you get.
Muscle memory.
Exactly. And so I think people who are always comparing themselves, and now it's tricky because everyone can see all this art online. So I think it's really easy to say oh, that's so much better than what I do.
Yeah.
But everybody is at different levels. Everybody's at different points on this timeline of their experience and their careers and wherever they're at. I mean, now everyone's getting so much better, so much younger, because they can share information in ways that we couldn't do in the past. It's basically having online school.
It really is.
But you can't, you can't compare. I think I always tell people the best way to do it is have a sketchbook and just draw every day in it. Doesn't matter what it is. Just be working on something. Draw things that you don't think you're good at. Draw cars. Draw whatever. Draw other things. Right? Work on your perspective. Work on your anatomy. Work on that stuff. And then in a year, go back and look at your drawings and where you are a year from now, and see if you feel like you've improved. Because I think that's the key to judge yourself, not against other people, but against yourself.
That's true.
Yeah.
I actually think that's really great advice, because I do feel like it. I for the longest time I wouldn't look at my past drawings because I was so ashamed of how bad they were. But it's kind of recent, I would say, in the past couple of years, that I'm maybe looking at the past is a good way for me to see how much I've grown.
Exactly. I think that's the key, is you have to understand where you've been to know where you're going. It's like anything else. You can look back and be proud of stuff. It's not like you need to be ashamed, but you can also say oh, I've gotten better at doing this, and oh wow, you incorporate new styles and new elements in, and you can see how you've grown.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think there's a lot of value in sort of looking at those marks along the road and seeing, how you improve as an artist.
I think that's something that
I don't think I'm the best. I know I'm not the best artist.
Sure.
But I also don't work at it as hard as I should.
I think you're great, first of all. Just to say.
Well, thank you, but I don't.
Yeah.
So
I know, but I know you don't feel that way, because no one ever does.
I know what my strengths are, and
Yes.
I know what I'm good at, and I know that I have a certain quality to my drawings that's appealing, and I do like that. But I also know that I hit a wall, and I struggle drawing many things, and it's very frustrating to me.
And I feel the same way.
And I have not put in the work to break through that wall and get better.
I feel the same way. I feel people, I'll say the same thing. I know I'm not great, and people want to no, you're good. I did the same thing to you just now. But Yeah, it's like, you know,
I'm not saying I'm terrible. I just
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
I know
yeah.
where my weaknesses are, and I know that I'm not as well rounded in a lot of things
Sure.
as I wish.
Nor
but
do
I
you
also
need to
know
be.
that like
Yeah, you don't need to be, because we can't be good at everything, and especially for, I think, people who are looking to, you know, create shows and stuff. Like, you have to juggle so many different things and wear so many hats that, like, you know, you've spent lots of time writing. Probably you've honed that craft,
Like a
you've
tool.
honed
Yeah,
X,
you know,
Y, and Z.
well, that's the thing. I feel like my strength is actually more in writing and storytelling.
Sure.
And to me, drawing was always a means to an end.
Yes, I agree.
Like a tool to tell jokes
Same
and
for me,
to
yeah.
tell characters and stories versus just drawing for the sake of drawing and making pretty pictures. And so I really find that I much prefer working on figure out who they are in funny moments and using the drawing to enhance that stuff.
Right.
Especially when it comes to like, that's why I liked storyboarding, because storyboarding was basically comics.
Right.
And I could write out a scene. And that's why I've always worked on shows that are board driven, because I get to write, you know, and that's the part that I like.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right. I was gonna kind of take you back to college for you. What did you major in? Kind of what was kind of it was University
Texas
of
at Austin.
Texas at Austin. Like how was the curriculum like?
I took a class in high school that was a commercial art class, and it was a vocational, like 2 hours a day for 2 years class. It was really cool. It was it was basically learning art that was for kind of like how to be an art director, right? Like
cool.
we learned, and this was like really early. That I think we just got some Max back in the day, because this was probably like 88, 89, 90, somewhere around there. You know, we were learning airbrushing, we were learning fonts, we were learning silk screening, paste up. Basically, a lot of stuff that you could then go get a job at a publication or in advertising, which is what I ended up doing. So you know, I had a real fondness for art direction. I really liked fonts. I really liked design. I liked layouts. I liked logos. I liked graphic design, and so kind of coming from that, I was like, well, I think then I really want to go into advertising, because I liked the problem solving nature of it. I liked commercials. I liked print ads. And so that's what I studied in college. I went through and got an advertising degree. And it was fun. You know, you get to learn a lot about both kind of problem solving through like, how do I communicate an idea about this thing to people in a creative way.
Yeah.
And then when I was working in advertising, it'd be also like, well, then how do I pitch this idea to people who aren't creative, you know, executives at Colgate? How do I walk in and be like, hey, you should spend $1 million on this commercial? And they're like, why? You know, you can't just be because it's funny. You have to like talk in these ideas of communication objectives and like, what does it say? What does it communicate to people? How does it communicate to people? And those are really interesting tools that I took eventually into animation.
Yeah,
that's what I was going to ask you. Do you feel like that's specific part of your curriculum helped you with pitching shows?
I think the work experience I got in advertising really helped a lot. Yeah. You know, in school it was interesting, because what we did in school was they would give us, they'd be like, all right, you're going to make an ad for pickles, and you know, do it as a print campaign or whatever, and you put it up and you get feedback. So it was good in learning how to take, you know, constructive criticism and give constructive criticism, things like that, because I didn't really have any art classes. This was the only, I took one life drawing class and hated it because the teacher well, he didn't focus on anatomy. He would talk about composition. I'd be like, dude, I'm trying to learn how to draw a body. I don't care about the composition. Like,
that's not the time for that.
Yeah, let me learn the proportions. And so I didn't like it. So that was the only art class I ever took in college.
Yeah.
But going into advertising, I learned a lot just working in the industry, because I learned about film production. I learned about editing and post-production. I got to go on photo shoots and film shoots. Got to learn about casting. Got to learn about pitching. So when I came into animation, I had a lot of experience on that end of the production, which was really helpful once I eventually got my own show. It was like, oh, this is all very familiar territory.
That's crazy. It's like you went through the tutorial for the job you ended up doing in a completely different game. Like, that's how I see it.
Yeah, kind of. It's crazy because when I left advertising, I basically quit the job, got a job on Spongebob, and came, as a starter level as a board revisionist, and was like, all right, I need to learn about animation. So, there was a lot to learn. I learned all the technical stuff on the job.
How long were you working in advertising before you moved to animation?
4 years. So I was in New York City for 4 years doing that.
How was it for you moving from? Did you grow up in Texas, or did you move to Texas for college?
No. I grew up in Texas, like the burbs of North Dallas, basically. So yeah, my whole life had been Texas. I loved New York. I thought it was awesome. It was such a nice change of pace. I really loved it. It was great.
Coming from the burbs, I'm sure.
Yeah, and I mean, Austin was fun. It was a big town. It was really cool. It's like 50. When I was there, it was like 55,000 students.
Oh wow!
It's a huge school.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I really, really loved New York. I miss it. It was a lot of fun.
Do you think you?
I mean, I do. There's a lot of things I don't miss.
Yeah.
I like having more space out here, but man, it was a good time. Like going there right after college, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I can imagine. It's like a culture shock element to it, probably, because it's so different.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I don't know. I just like walking everywhere and taking the subway and going out to eat all the time and walking around and seeing people of all, types. It's like the people watching so fun there.
Yeah, it really is. I think that it's a good idea for anybody who's getting into an artistic field, especially if you're from like suburbs or whatever, which a lot of people are, I think, just statistically, like, it's good to go live in a city when you're first kind of getting your adult legs. Because, like, for me, it was San Francisco. That was my first big city, even though I am on the outskirts of Chicago. But, like, that didn't feel like... It didn't feel like... That was just, like, the city in the background of my childhood. But, like, San Francisco was my New York, because it was, like, something new.
It's just a level of diversity and things you're exposed to that I don't think you normally get.
Yeah, you want to challenge yourself a little bit. And
It's interesting.
It ends up better. How was that switch for you? Like, well, I guess not so much how was the switch, but... how did it go from you working in advertising to working in animation in LA?
Man, it was so much harder working in animation.
Oh yeah?
So
really?
much harder. Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, because I'm coming into a new industry where I'm drawing all the time.
Yeah,
like,
it's exhausting.
I was doing so much drawing. It was so much harder. And
because you weren't drawing all the time when you were.
I wasn't drawing all the time, and the boards you do in advertising are much looser and more just kind of beat boards.
I see. Okay.
And then suddenly it's like, oh, I have to draw in somebody else's style. A lot of it was the pressure on myself to want to do a good job.
Sure.
And then you're working with like amazing people who are all really funny. And there's a little bit of that imposter syndrome of like, oh God, they're going to figure out that I don't belong here. And it was amazing. It was fun. It was such a good crew and I learned so much, but it was very stressful. And the TV animation, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work. Once I started boarding, oh my God, boarding, it was like the hardest job I've ever done in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I think it's something that like sometimes I don't know how to explain it, but it is like storyboarding is a lot of work. And I think it's like kind of hard to kind of like get it across because I feel like sometimes
you're drawing so much. And it's not just the physical drawing. It's like, okay, let's not even say that you're writing. Let's not even say that it's a board-driven show.
Yeah.
Like you've got to think as an actor, a cinematographer, a director, and an editor, all in the same time.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Right. Mm-hmm. Everything is like, what do I cut to? Why do I cut to this? What do I need to see? Oh Jesus, can I even draw this? Shit.
A lot of thinking.
What's the acting? Yeah. Oh God, can I draw this acting in this perspective? Okay, what do I need to do? What's the emotion? what's the mood. There's like so many decisions to make all the time. You put so much of yourself into it that it's a very draining process. It's really fun. It's really rewarding. I love it to death, but oh my God, it's really...
It does get easier though, I think.
A little easier, but it's still so much
Yeah. I mean,
because there's 5 million decisions to make all the time.
Yeah. 100%. I was gonna ask, how did SpongeBob reach out to you? Like, did you apply, or did they reach out?
So the way that I connected with them, it was really interesting. I picked up an issue of Animation magazine. There was an ad in the very front page that said, "Hey, we're looking for people at Nickelodeon.
Oh, wow.
Send in stuff." So I was like, all right. So I put together a big packet of like doodles and comics and other shit and just mailed it in.
Damn.
Didn't hear anything, was like, whatever. Then eventually I heard something back about doing like a little freelance character design. It's like, oh, okay, did a couple doodles, got paid like $75. Like, cool. Then I was able to get in touch with someone who was in development there. And one of the times when we came out to do a commercial shoot in LA, I got a meeting with that person and showed them some of my ideas for stuff. And they're like, oh yeah, this is cool, whatever. And then, but I showed them some of my comics and they're like, oh, these are cool. And I've got a friend who's developing a show right now, and I think he might like your work. And that was Steve Hillenburg, who was, developing SpongeBob. And because the guy who was in charge of development was one of his old, he was a director on Rocco. And I was a big Rocco fan. So I was like, oh, this is super cool. And basically he forwarded my comics to Steve. And then Steve, I got a meeting with him and we chatted, and he was like, hey, if the show gets greenlit, then, would you want to come on and do revisions? And I was like, yeah. So that's how it came about.
That's really cool.
It's such a weird story, but it's.
I feel like it's similar to how it would play out nowadays, except that instead of like going through Animation magazine, now it's like the internet.
Yeah.
Well, and that's part of why I would hunt for people online and find their comics, because it's sort of the same way that I came in. It's like I'll find artists that I think are interesting and try to get in contact with them and see if, if they're the right fit for the show or not.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's totally that way now. Yeah.
And so you were revisionist on SpongeBob, and like, how long were you doing revisions before you got into boards?
So I was a revisionist for the first season, and then they had a pretty long hiatus because the network didn't know if they wanted to pick up more of the show, because they had put all their eggs in their basket on Cat Dog, and so they weren't sure if they wanted.
That's so funny.
So we did a first season of SpongeBob was 13 episodes, and then there was a bit of a hiatus, and then because there was that hiatus, I think they picked up 7 more to make it to 20. Then there was a longer hiatus because they weren't sure if they wanted more, and so a lot of the board artists left because they had to go on to other jobs once they were done. So then when the season 2 pickup came, I was still there doing revisions, and they're like, "Oh hey,
yeah,
do you want to do boarding?"
Amazing.
And I was like, "Yeah." So that's they promoted me up to doing boarding, and then going to season 3 they promoted me up to directing, which was basically the exact same thing. It just means you get a pay raise. That's all. So,
right.
But yeah, it was great. I got to partner up with Aaron Springer, who was amazing, and I learned so much from working with him, and it was just awesome.
Yeah, you guys made probably most of my favorite SpongeBob episodes. So a tip of the hat to you.
Oh, thank you.
It's funny as fuck.
It was a fun show. So many good people on that show.
Yeah, it's some iconic shit.
How did you always know you wanted to pitch shows, or like how did that kind of come about to you?
I think that came about because because I was making my own comics, I always liked making my own characters. I wasn't someone who would usually draw other characters. I didn't like spend my time drawing Garfield and trying to draw other characters. I was like, I loved The Far Side. I loved Calvin and Hobbes. I loved Bloom County. Those were like my favorite comics, right? And I wanted to do something like those. So I knew I wanted to make something that were my own characters, my own world, and so yeah, I think that road was always
right.
set.
And how did you kind of like start like actually actively going after that, you know?
I mean, I would work on ideas. I've, sketchbooks full of ideas over the years, but I think if we go back to, Chowder being the first one, it was just an idea that I kept doodling and working on, and when I was on Billy and Mandy, there was an opportunity to pitch shorts because they had just started a brand new shorts program, actually run by Sam Register, who's now in charge of.
Oh, interesting.
So I went into Sam and I was like, "Hey, I want to do this show about this." I showed him Chowder, and it was nice because they were, they were like Jay was my executive. Jay Bastian was my executive on Billy and Mandy.
Oh wow! So even back then, I didn't know that you guys go back that far.
Yeah. So I mean, that was the thing. So Jay was like, "Yeah, we like this guy." I think they were like, just let him do a short. Right. And Sam had just gotten like this, they basically were like, hey, you need to do, I forget how many shorts it was, like they gave him a big order. So I think he was just like, yeah, great, let's do it. And so Sam was the one who said yes to doing the Chowder short. And then when it got picked up, Jay was my executive on that. And so, that's why coming back and working with them at Warner Brothers now is such a nice, combo, because it's like people who were very supportive of me back in the day and who I've known and creatively been very connected with. It's nice to have them. They have my back here too.
I had no idea that
and that was one of the reasons I wanted to come and do the show in the first place at Warner Brothers, was because of them.
Yeah, cool. Like the people. Yeah, that's really
because cool. I knew they trusted me and I trusted them.
That goes.
If they gave me feedback, I'd be like, cool, I'll listen to it, because you know what I mean? There's that two-way respect that's happening. So it's much easier to be like, this is a project that I know will be fun to work on, because both sides are actually listening to each other.
Yeah.
And you also like kind of speak the same language and like that kind of stuff too. Like you're building that relationship in that
exactly.
way too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they say, we want you because we like what you do.
Oh yeah, that's great.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's always a good feeling.
Oh, it's a great feeling.
Yeah, we've talked to some execs on the show before, like Brandon Hong and I think somebody else. Yeah, nice, Brandon's great. But and I think we've just kind of we've gone on about how like executives can sometimes get a bad rap, because I think a lot of people will see them as gatekeepers, but like they're working with you. They're supposed to be a partner to help you like realize your show. And,
for sure.
Yeah, and finding
there's different levels of executives. That's the thing I don't think most people realize. Like there's the sort of on the ground executives who really are working with the creator, giving feedback, and they're really a go between the network and their needs and the show's needs, and they have to sort of serve both sides, right? But at the end of the day, you hope that they trust you creatively, and then if they tell you they need something, you trust them because they know the directives they're getting from the network, right?
Yeah.
And then there's higher up executives that are more removed from the artists, and I think those are the ones that people are always like, because they kind of tend to not be boots on the ground. You know what I mean? My experience with the day-to-day executives has always been extremely positive.
Yeah.
I find that there are people who got into animation because they love animation, they like the artists, they like the shows, they like the networks they work for. They're fans who want to make good things and basically just aren't artists, right?
Yeah.
And they've always been very friendly towards the artist, towards the crew, towards the needs of that.
Yeah.
People get frustrated with the executives who are sort of like in the ivory towers, way high up, and that's kind of a different level of executive.
Yeah, it really is. There's a whole hierarchy.
Yeah.
It's like a dungeon, and you're getting to the final boss. Who's the president? Everything's video games with me. You have a very unique style to your work, and it's really easy to identify, I think. And I wonder, like, what are your sort of core influences that help shape that look?
Yeah, that's interesting, because, I think as an artist, there's so many times where you don't know what your style is till you sort of go a long way, and then you look back and you're like, oh, those are things that I sort of keep coming back to. There's a couple of things. If we talk from an aesthetic point of view, I really, I mean, you could look at character designs and say, like, I like things that feel squishable.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, that's totally it. I can see that.
I like things that feel like they have volume and they feel like you could just like squeeze them, you know?
I love that,
and there's
yeah.
something that just, I find that those kind of characters just appealing to me. When I design, I kind of just tend to go in that direction. You know, people who have little exaggerated proportions or kind of squat, maybe that's just based off of me. I don't know. But yeah, but I find that, okay, so that's one thing that I've noticed I tend to gravitate towards in my own drawings. Two is I tend to really like, stylistically, I like art that has energy and feels hand-drawn.
Yeah.
It's harder to do, I think, in animation in a TV show setting when things are going through so many different hands. You know, and maybe that comes from my days of cartooning, right? It's like I like stuff where you can see the artist behind it. And I think part of what I like in the shows I've worked on is I like seeing when I can be like, oh, I see the board artist in this. I see their weird drawing. I see their touches in that. You know, those are the things versus trying to homogenize it too much.
Right.
Like, yeah, you have to homogenize it to a certain degree because you need a consistency across all the artists working on the show. But, you know, like if you look at Chowder, I love watercolors. I like the randomness that happens in art sometimes. Like for me, I can't animate because I can't make two lines ever go in the same way that I want them to go. Like I don't know how people can draw a drawing and make it subtly shift on purpose. My hand just kind of goes where it wants to go. I don't have that level of control.
It's easier digitally with onion skins and stuff, but
I guess, but
yeah.
I never had the patience for that. But yeah,
I ran out of patience for it a while ago.
So to me, I like those little surprises. You know, when I was thinking about this, animation is it's so hard to be spontaneous. If you're filming live action, things happen on the set and the actors do spontaneous things and you get little surprises.
Yeah.
Animation, it's like the surprise happens during the writing, but everything else is just, it's so methodical and it has to be planned out and so done over time that it's hard to keep that level of spontaneity, I think, and surprise in it for you, the creator. That I like art that still can somehow keep some of that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
The closest thing I can think of that maintains that is when there's like a funny expression on a character in the boards and it manages to get through all the way through design and it's a special pose, and then when somebody's watching it, it'll feel like it's improvised, even though you know that had to be carefully constructed to be. Yeah. Like, there's
or little jokes in the, you know, it's part of it, and part of what I like is like, we'll do a lot of writing in animatic.
Yeah.
Because we can kind of improvise. We can kind of just like riff and record ourselves come up with dumb lines and funny takes and things like that. And I find that some of the things we add in animatic to me are always the funniest because they are just sort of weird off the cuff moments.
I see.
So yeah, it's tricky. So I think I like to be surprised. And that's part of what I love about working in animation is working with people and they pitch something that's so damn funny and they come up with weird things. But then you look at it for a year straight over and over and over and over.
Is this funny anymore?
And it's like, how do you... Yeah, but at the same time, you don't want to change it because you know it was funny.
Yeah, at some point, this made you laugh.
I think that's like really hard, actually, too, because I even when you're doing like your own boards or like I don't know, just like looking at your own boards like for a whole month, you know, when you're like doing an episode or something, it's kind of hard to stay like.
Oh yeah.
Because I relate to what you're saying is like sometimes you just draw a funny drawing in roughs and then you have to clean it and you're like is this
I'm gonna
even,
kill it.
like, am I gonna kill it? Is this even funny anymore? Do I have to just change this whole scene just to make it funnier or whatever? And it's like,
Oh, I know. Imagine, like, when I did the pilot for this thing, every time I do a pilot, by the time you're working on it for a year and a half, the same 11-minute episode, by the time it gets to be in the series, I'm like, I don't ever want to see this episode again. I'm so sick of this
That's
thing.
hard.
You know,
Yeah,
like,
it's
on the
tough.
one hand, you want to show it to people, but on the other hand, it's like, oh, please don't make me watch it again.
Yeah.
How do you kind of like find the strength to go through a pilot?
You know, it's so I was thinking about this. This is kind of a bigger issue of like
Yeah.
coming off of Harvey. I was like, man, I don't know if I have the strength to do another show because it takes a lot out of you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think you have to come at it with this firm belief in your gut that there's something really good here.
I see.
And that it'll work. You know what I mean? Like, you have to believe deep down that this is going to work.
Right.
And that I know it'll be good. And I think that's sort of the fire that keeps me going.
Yeah.
And sometimes that fire goes away and you gotta like find it again. And it has to be the right project or whatever.
I was going to ask about that. Do you have like specific things that you do to kind of like keep it going, or like, or do you like take breaks?
No,
or,
it ebbs and flows with time. Like when I was done with Harvey, I was like, man, the fire was gone. I couldn't see myself working in kids animation anymore.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't feel excited by anything. I felt sad, and I didn't feel like I could put myself into another show for a while. So I just took time off. I mean, I was lucky. That I had a bit of savings and I could afford to do that.
Right.
But even if I had just been boarding or doing something, I could have done that. That's fine. You know what I mean?
I think it's part of the life, though. I think everyone quickly realizes that, like, we get paid fairly well, but it's like you gotta save because you never know when that truck is gonna hit you. You know, like
Exactly.
you gotta the creative sort of roadblock truck, and so you gotta just be like, all right, this is I've
creative roadblock truck or the I can't find a job truck, and that happens too.
Yeah, that happened to me this year, and so I've been lucky to take time off. That's great.
Yeah, and so time off was that was the first time I really took time off. I've been working in the industry since '98. I had a little break after Spongebob. There wasn't any work. 9/11 happened and everything kind of dried up for a bit. But I've been working pretty much nonstop since Billy and Mandy, and so it was good to have a little time off. I just took me time. And then eventually that little fire started to bubble up and ideas started to come to me. And I was like, ooh, that could be kind of fun. And you start thinking of things. And I guess it just becomes like this thing that I can't deny inside that I have to kind of work on, And then you start to get these ideas and you're like, oh, that would be a really good show. Like, I could really see this working. And then it's sort of like, oh, it's back. And then, I got contacted by Warner Brothers about doing this Hanna-Barbera thing, and I was like, oh, now that sounds fun. Just, that was something I could immediately see myself enjoying. It was with people that I knew. They basically gave me the keys to the kingdom and said, do whatever you want to do. And I'm like, how can I turn that down?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just, I think when you hit that roadblock, you just sort of have to like pivot and do something else for a while and kind of re-energize.
Yeah. I mean, and we always like to ask about creative block, but it sounds like you already kind of answered it, which is just...
Well, I mean, there's two kinds of creative block. To me, there's a creative block of like, if I'm working and I'm on a board and I'm being paid, I still have to make something. I can't just walk away, right?
Yeah.
Like, I have to be a professional and I have to come up with stuff. And I think in that case, you just have to... I don't know. It's tricky. Like, I remember back when I was on SpongeBob and 9/11 happened and we all were like, ugh. And then the next week we come into work and we're like, we have to be funny? What is going on? But you're like, well, we have to. That's our job. Like, so let's just forget about everything for a little bit and just kind of put your brain back into this world and just think about silly stuff for a day and then go home at night and then worry about the world then.
Cry. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it's part of being a professional. It's hard. Like it doesn't mean you're always going to output your best stuff.
Yeah.
Because life happens, but you have to just still try. You have to always be trying your best.
Yeah.
You know,
I think that environment is actually better for dealing with a lot of that kind of stuff. I remember when Trump got elected, the next day at work was like dismal. I think V, were you there already?
Oh, yeah.
At that point.
Oh my God. I actually just got to LA
Oh yeah.
like 2 weeks prior.
You should have just turned around and left.
Yeah, I mean,
Get back on the plane.
without getting too political or anything, but you know, like things come and go.
So what you're saying is you love Trump. You were so excited.
I can't.
It was the best day of your life.
I can't even
I don't want any Trump people listening to this anyway, so whatever. Fuck them.
I was gonna joke about it, and I'm like, I can't even the words can't come out of my mouth. It's like that's too hard to joke.
No. But that's the thing. And I mean, I know everybody, regardless of what you feel about that, like, you know, people experience ups and downs in their lives for all kinds of reasons, and it doesn't mean that, like, you know, I've had many people in my crew who they've gone through different things, and you can be flexible. You have to like give people the space to deal with their stuff. Sometimes they do have to walk away and take care of life for a little bit, and you have to just have someone else take over. And other times it's like, you got to be like, hey man, you just got to suck it up and get your job done, because we're all working as hard as we can to do this. And it really does take this full team all working together, you know, and that's just part of being a professional. It's like, you have to just do it.
Yeah. There's also just like different personalities, and I don't know, like, I know that I'm the kind of person that like work is a good distraction if things are not like going well. So for me, like, I don't know, with this whole like past years, it kind of worked out for me, because it's like, well, if I work, I don't have to think about other things. But yeah, like then there's like other personalities. So it's kind of depends.
Yeah, but it's like if you were on a sports team, if you were on a football team, you got to go out on the field and do your best. Like, it's still got to put on your game face and do it.
Performing.
And I mean, at the end of the day, if you're taking the money to do the job, you got to do the job. So.
Yeah.
But that's different. That's, you know, like I said, that's two different things if you're talking about like creatively, personally trying to find your passion versus being a professional and doing your job.
Yeah.
You know, I think if you're trying to find your passion, because I've worked with many people who, and like I said, I kind of even went through this too. You hit some point in your career where you're like, oh, is this what am I really getting fulfilled? Is this what I want to keep doing? Can I keep on this treadmill of like going from kid show to kid show and dealing with the same bullshit and the same blah, blah, blah. But part of me just loves it so much that it's hard not to. But I've seen other people kind of struggle with that. Where, you know, you come in your first 10 years in the industry, you're like, whoa, this is awesome. I'm in animation. It's everything I ever dreamed of. And I'm so excited to be here. And I love animation. And then you're like, okay, I've done a job. And then it starts to become a job, right? It starts to become like, I go from job to job. I go from project to project. And you start to realize that a lot of it is, who do I get to work with?
Yes. Yeah.
What's the environment I'm in? What is the project? Like it becomes more than just, I always say, like, you might work on a show that's just okay, but it has an awesome crew and they're really fun to work with. You have a great time. You might work on a show that's awesome, but it was a miserable experience because the crew and the people in charge were dicks, and you know what I mean? Like, so I've been super, super fortunate that like every show I've worked on has been a great crew, a really fun show. And I mean, I don't know if that's it's by design on my end when I
it comes through,
you know. But the shows that I was on before that, I think I was sort of taught that. Like, SpongeBob was a well-run machine with a really creative, fun crew who got along, worked hard. When I came on to Billy and Mandy, same thing. It was a very, you know, tight-knit crew. We all became fast friends. We all had a lot of fun. We all put out, you know, the best we could do, and it was run on schedule and on budget, and so those were lessons where I was like, oh, this is what a show should be like. And I think that helped me when I started doing my own shows to understand, like, that's what it's like.
Yeah. You know, for what it's worth, like, I had a great time on Jellystone. It was really...
I feel bad because you didn't really get the best experience. We were there for like a month or two, and then we all went home.
But like, that's, you know, a world crisis. But like...
I know.
But even then, like, even with that in mind, like, I wouldn't have wanted to work on any other show during pandemic, because it was like, you know, a bunch...
Oh, no, our show was definitely like...
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was
we had a good team kind of controlling and
good
or not
production,
controlling, but organizing things behind the
quick.
scenes.
Yeah, we quickly pivoted, and everyone. I mean, like the Slack chat or whatever it was, Teams was like very friendly, and everyone was, we were all forgiving of the whole thing, which I don't think every crew was. So
yeah, it's amazing how smoothly it went. All things considered.
Yeah, absolutely. I think people kind of gravitate, you're talking about crews and stuff, and I think people kind of gravitate towards like-minded people, and, it's like people that expect a certain kind of environment and a certain kind of show and a certain kind of crew. They're gonna keep working together, and they're gonna bring new people in who they've met along the way who also are seeking that out. So I have found that people kind of funnel back into even if you might have a job or two in between, where it's maybe not a good fit, but you have no way of knowing, plus you got to pay the bills. But like ultimately you're gonna end up, for a time, you're gonna end up back with people you like, and it's just this constantly shifting landscape. So like,
yeah, you just have to prioritize that.
You do.
And the other thing is, like, I always say, like, so much of the show is not dictated by the network. It's dictated by the showrunner, like the tone of the show and how it's run. And people don't realize that, like, Disney, Cartoon Network, Nick, doesn't matter. I've worked at them all. They're all nice places to work. The network themselves, they're all roughly the same. It's the showrunner that creates what the show experience is like.
Yeah, that is kind of an unspoken thing. I think that people outside the industry might not fully know that, and I've always thought about that too. That if I ever manage to get a show, like, I'm gonna try my fucking hardest to just make it a nice place to work for people, because you just want people to enjoy their fucking lives and the project. And
exactly, it's like, come in, work hard, and go home, have your life.
And it makes a better show at the end of the day. Like, there's a lot of lessons that I've observed from just being on the ground level and seeing different showrunners work. It's like, the more freedom you give people, the better the show is, and the happier you retain people longer. It's just like a whole. It's just better.
It's an interesting. I'll talk about this. So when I first started Chowder, you go from being an artist who created your own thing and spent time, and you made this little baby, right? You drew it, you boarded it, whatever, you made it the pilot. It's been something you've been working on for however many years, even before that, right?
Yeah.
And then they greenlight it, and suddenly you hand your baby to all these other people, and you are no longer doing any of that stuff, right? You have to delegate everything. And now you've got like 20 plus people that you have to teach to think in the way that you want them to think for the show, and teach them like what's right and wrong for the show. And you have to let go. And it's really hard, I think, especially in your first show, to sort of learn to let go. I found that it's very healthy to let go.
Yeah.
That if you, the more you hang on, the more it kills you. Because you can only do so much. You only have so much energy. You only have so much to give, right? You want to do everything. It's like, I was on Chowder. It's like, I want to do designs. I want to do boards. I want to fix this stuff. I want to do these things. But man, I only have so many hours in the day and so much mental and physical energy. It was really hard. So by the time I came into Harvey, I was like, oh man, I can't do that again. I got to just really delegate everything out, And it's a hard lesson, I think, for a lot of creators, because nobody teaches you. They hire you because you're an artist and a storyteller, and you have this idea, but suddenly you're a manager. And no one teaches you how to be a manager.
That's something I talk about a lot with my friends and stuff. I really wish that there were, that the companies had like management and leadership workshops, because I feel like everybody would benefit.
Like I was interested in that stuff on my own, and I would read and pay attention, but like that's where you see a lot of shows fall apart, is in the management and leadership, because people aren't trained in that, and they're not. It's like, a lot of artists in animation are introverted weirdos, and that doesn't always make the best management style. You know what I mean? Like,
and it's actually something that I started really, because when you're lucky and you go on a lot of shows that are well managed, and you're like, this is the best. I know exactly what I would do if I were a manager. But you don't really realize until you go on a show that it's not managed really well. Then you're like, oh, that's what it's like when people don't communicate, or people like don't really,
or egos get out of control. And
and then you're like, oh, and then that's kind of like the moment you're like, maybe I'll buy a couple of books.
Yeah, right. That would be great. I really do wish networks would take the time to teach, because it would benefit them. They would have much smoother productions. You know?
They would save a lot of money, I think. Yeah.
And heartache.
Yeah, a lot of problems would be solved. And plus, like, and even just, when I first got into the industry, I thought that the studio, especially with how much, like, Nickelodeon would talk about how, you know, well, we help our showrunners, like, develop stuff and this and that, and Cartoon Network is bad because they don't tell you how to build a show. And then I slowly figured out that none of them do anything. Like,
nope.
It's like they
just throw you in the deep end.
They throw you into the wolves, and it's like, and I was like, wait, there's no like, is there no like recurring guidebook to doing this? Like, you'd think that especially with line producers, there would be sort of a copy and paste of pipelines, and maybe with slight adjustments. But I was like, wait.
The only thing they'll do is if they feel like the showrunner is that inexperienced, they will bring in a more experienced producer to pair with them, to give them a hand. That's the closest they'll do.
Yeah, it's also a good strategy if it's someone that has a lot of experience and that can basically mentor you. But it's also, I think it would just benefit everyone. Even like, I don't know, even like supervisors and directors. Like, I think the first time that I was a supervisor, like, I was just like, whoa, like, I am out of my, like, you know, depth. I was like, holy moly, I have to think about all these things. I had no idea I had to think about all these things.
But and what's really weird too is like you suddenly become the supervisor to people who were all your peers. And I've seen that go to people's heads and turn them into monsters. You know, it's like, no, man, we're all working together. We're just trying to, like, they're just looking to you for direction. Like, don't.
Yeah, you just gotta.
You're not. Guidance. You know.
Did you, before you started running shows, did you? Yeah, you said you were directing on SpongeBob, right? Did you do a couple like supervision roles?
No, I was never actually in charge of anybody. Like that directing literally was just title only and paid. Oh, it wasn't. It was like me and Kaz in a room together, and it was exactly the same as before. So it was a very different kind of directing. And then when I went on to Billy and Mandy, it was just me working on boards alone, and then they were like, "And here's Chowder." I think I'm just lucky that I'm kind of a bossy person, and I'm very specific, and I also at the same time like working with people, and am very like. You know, I get along with people, so I think that helps.
Yeah. Do you feel like, would you have any kind of, not like rules, but like kind of philosophies about managing? Kind of what are your...
My philosophy on managing is, there's a couple of things. One, you got to know what you want, but you have to be flexible enough to not know exactly what you want. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think the second thing is, if you hire people, let them do their damn jobs.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I hire creative people because they're creative. I'm going to actually let them be creative. You know, my job is to sort of set up the boundaries and to say, like, here's it's like herding cats, right? I'm trying to push everybody in a direction. I'm trying to say, like, here's the rules of the world. Here's the tone I want. And then everybody's throwing stuff at me and I'm just gut checking and saying, like, yeah, I like that. And if it's not, I think one of the things that I took away from my time in boarding was I always liked when people would tell me, I didn't mind making changes when I understood why something wasn't working.
That's true.
If they just said, oh, make it funnier, or oh, make it better, like, that's not helpful.
Yeah.
I don't know what to go back. I thought it was funny, so what do I go back and change? So this was going back to that idea of communication objectives, which I talked about earlier from advertising. And if I could say to somebody like, oh, you know, this moment's not working for me because I'm not clear what this character wants, or I don't understand how they feel about this person, or I feel like the clarity of this joke is getting a little bit lost. Maybe we could stage it a little bit better. There's specific actionable things that they can go back and do that aren't that to me then don't demoralize the person on the other end of it, because it's not about like my taste versus your taste.
Right.
It's about what do I need in this scene and what's not coming across.
That's the problem.
Now
solving.
you find a solution to make that work.
Yeah. I even see development as, well, that's the tough part, because development wants you to have a fully formed show before it's even fucking ready. But
exactly.
But I think that like a good way to think of pitching a show is not this is the story that I want to tell. It's like, this is a toolbox that I want other people to contribute to. Like
well, especially like if I go into development, I go in with, these are the relationships that I want to focus on.
Even
this
better.
is the world that I want to play in. These are the these are the characters that I'm interested in exploring, and this is their dynamic that I'm really attracted to.
That's a really good way to look, because I think people don't. I didn't know. I had a hard time figuring that out, and I've been trying to yell it to the heavens, like focus on relationships first, not about like the lore, or like.
Oh, totally. And the thing is, then that way, if there's changes, and I always said like, development's going to throw ideas at you, and it's up to you to determine if those changes change the core relationships and ideas that attracted you to this in the first place. If they don't change it, then why not try it? Let's see if it works. And if it does fundamentally change it, then you can say to them, I tried this idea, but I feel like it gets away from the thing that I brought this in. And I find that most of the time they're like, oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. And when they throw out ideas, they're not saying you have to do this specific exact thing. They're just trying to find solutions to what they perceive as a problem. And if you can put your finger on what that problem is, then you can find a solution that makes you happy and them happy.
The note behind the note.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a tough one to learn and figure out, but you just gotta be sharp, and you gotta like come ready with options. It's kind of hard to predict sometimes, but I think it's good to have your finger on the pulse of like what's current in animation and almost be ready for certain things. And
well, it's funny because like you say like you go into development with this thing, and I've become much more loosey-goosey with my development pitches than I used to be. Like, I'll walk in and be like, all right, it's kind of this and it's kind of that, and I see it's sort of like this, and I think it's like this, and it might be blah.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
you have experience.
It's so not figured out. I definitely have I can back
clout.
out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
It's tough when you're starting out, because they expect you to have you're.
Well, but I think in that case, you come in with something you've already made. Like in your case, you had.
It does help.
You had something you had made.
Yeah.
You had your comics, and they were there and tangible, and they could look at it and say like, "That's his sensibility. I get it."
Yeah.
You know, that's why I tell people like, make some comics, make something, because they have to see who you are before they're going to give you a shot to do anything.
Proof of concept. You need to have proof of concept.
Yeah, exactly. And you're going to have to just do that on your own time.
A few character designs and a bunch of writing could go a million different ways, and it's not enough anymore.
It's not, no. And you have to figure it out on your own. You want to spend time to say like, is this even a show, or is it just a character?
Yeah.
Like a show is relationships and a setting and people and dynamics. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's more to it than just a fun character.
We've had a lot of really good questions, and some of them will tie into this too.
Okay.
So let's dig in. From @catfoods, please. They wanted to know what your favorite thing about working in animation is.
Oh, man. I'm never good with favorites. You know, I would say it honestly has become, my favorite thing is seeing when I go into a board pitch and I get to laugh. I like when people make me laugh. That's my favorite thing. I just like being entertained.
Sure. Well, that's the whole point of this.
And so I get to work in an industry that entertains me. Like, I love it. That's my favorite thing.
Yeah.
I look forward to that when I come in and know that I'm going to get to laugh.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully that's a good thing to focus in on. Friend of the show @GA asks, Carl, what was your first OC?
So I had a character called Zibbler.
Oh boy. If there's nothing,
Zibbler,
can you draw Zibbler?
I don't know if I can.
Okay.
I'll try. So here's the thing. So this was the first comic strip that I did, and I was probably in like middle school. And Zibbler, I was really just like learning how to draw, right? And I couldn't draw bodies, so it was literally all the characters were disembodied floating heads and hands.
Oh, great.
So I could just focus on expressions and hand gestures.
Yeah.
and I didn't and this is what I'm saying, I should have forced myself to work on bodies, but I didn't, so I didn't get good at that. I just like drawing faces.
From at Nathaniel Foga, what's your favorite piece of obscure Hanna-Barbera media?
Oh, jeez. That's a good question.
You have a weird encyclopedic knowledge of it.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Is it like hate love? Like I
Sure.
watched these ones called Devlin, and they're so bad. Devlin was so bad. I would love to do something with Devlin at some point. He's like Evel Knievel at a circus. He's this guy who like does motorcycle stunts. It's one of those like realistic characters.
That sounds so crazy.
I really liked how dumb Moby Dick was, but I maybe Frankenstein Jr. I love giant robots. What can I say?
Yeah.
Like, Frankenstein Jr. might be one of the favorites of those.
Yeah.
From
at one Levi Church, do you have a particular episode that you were most proud of from any of your shows?
No, I don't. I never have favorites. I mean, I have episodes that there's always elements in each episode that I like a lot. I mean, one of the episodes I'm probably really proud of is Schnitzel Makes a Deposit, because I always like episodes where I give myself a challenge of like, how do I make standing in line funny?
Oh, sure. That's interesting.
And so I like that. Like I did an episode on Billy Mandy where we did Evil Con Carne, and I did an episode of them stuck in traffic for the whole episode.
It's like a bottle episode.
I was like, all right, how do I make them just sitting in a car in traffic funny?
Yeah.
And so I really like when I get to like challenge myself, like Alone on Harvey Beaks. I really liked that episode because, again, it was the challenge of how do I do a whole episode with just one character when everyone else is gone and they're all alone.
Yeah. From at PSI Takis, how was creating a show for a streaming service different from creating a show for a regular TV network? Did they have any special requirements?
No, exactly the same.
Okay.
Nice.
Exactly the same. Well, because the other thing was we had to make it airable for Jellystone because we knew it might be on Cartoon Network international and everything. So it had to follow exactly the same time length standards, everything as making a show for air.
Mm-hmm.
Now, however, that doesn't mean that other shows are differently. It's just in our case, we had to make it airable.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
This kind of ties into from at the other Voltar. What is the production process like when creating Chowder, which had puppets, CG, and live action clips, compared to your later works such as Harvey Beaks or Jellystone?
Exactly the same. And here's why. All of that live action stuff was actually done by a company called Screen Novelties.
Yeah.
And so what we would do is we would just send them the chunk of the board that we wanted animated in a different style, and then they animated it, whether it was puppets or stop motion or CG or whatever.
Oh, that's
so for
cool.
us, it was exactly the same as we would do any other show.
So, but you had different studios providing the different styles. Is that correct?
Yeah. So we had a deal with Screen Novelties where they would do like a few seconds for each episode. Mm-hmm. Like we would give them like one scene per episode, basically.
Mm-hmm. I see.
And we put that in the budget that we could afford to do just a little bit of stop motion animation, and whatever they could do with that budget, they would do.
Yeah.
So basically, you did kind of have to like, would you call it like interview or like test like the different vendors to kind of see like?
No, I really liked their work. They had done some cool stuff on they did this great dream sequence in Flintstone on the Rocks, Flintstones on the Rocks. And I met them, and they were just really cool, and I really liked their work. And so when I did the pilot, I was like, hey, what if we did a little bit of stop motion, and we got them to do it during the pilot. They did a great job, and so when we got the series, we budgeted in that we could do a little bit with them in every episode. The stuff with the end credits and the puppets, we budgeted to do those. We wrote the scripts, and then we had them film all that. Mm-hmm. So, but the actual production of the show itself was exactly the same. There was no difference. It would usually just be like, after we'd boarded, I'd be like, oh, this close-up of this fruit, let's do that stop motion. Oh, this little dream sequence, let's do that stop motion. Versus sending it overseas to the Korean studio.
I think a lot of people don't know that shows usually have a couple studios animating it. Like, because there's usually, at least in recent years, I think that's definitely true, where it's like there is an A studio and a B studio, where it's like, most of it is just cheaper to send it overseas somewhere, but then there'll be like a studio that's maybe domestic or it's just does slightly better work, and you focus in on more specific shots.
Yeah, it's interesting because this is the first time I've used 2 studios on Jellystone. Because on Chowder and Harvey Beaks we just had 1 studio. Mm-hmm. But yeah, a lot of shows. I mean, if people don't know, most TV animation is done overseas just because of budget.
Yeah.
It's too expensive to animate in the States, or you go to Canada. Really, only feature can kind of afford to do it here.
Yeah.
Or really low budget stuff that does like Adult Swim.
Yeah. From @Shavistian1, they actually asked do you have any plans to direct a feature film? Any interest, I guess?
I wouldn't say no. I don't have any current plans,
Yeah.
but I wouldn't say no. I've never worked in feature. I've talked to people who have. It sounds kind of stressful and miserable in a lot of ways.
We all laugh with
I
a
think
tear.
it really comes down to if it was the right project under the right circumstances and the right thing, and maybe, but it's not where I want to go right now. I would be much more interested in doing a limited series, like a mini series.
Yeah, over the garden.
Yeah,
that's fun.
Or recently Adventure Time did a couple of those.
Yeah, I like the idea of doing something shorter that way, where it's sort of like a feature, but the less eyes on me, the better.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I kind of like working under the radar.
Yeah.
And I think when you're on a feature, there's a lot of people involved and a lot of worry, a lot of fingers in the pie, and it depends. Like I said, I would never say no, but it's not something I'm actively looking at right now. I mean, there's a couple things that I've had ideas for that I actually thought this could actually work as more of a series. So, yeah, never say never.
Sure. @Liquid Scribbles asked, I thought this was interesting. What's the formula to coming up with a good tune? Do you feel like you have something like that?
Well, I wouldn't say it's a formula, but like I said, I think there's a couple of elements, and this was something I always tried to express to people. It's like I'll sit and doodle ideas, but it's not a show to me until I see a relationship.
I see. Interesting. Yeah.
That's a really good thing to focus on, I think. Yeah, we've said it already, but that's true.
I think it's a great way to summarize it. I don't think we've had it summarized in that way before, and I think that's
like when it came to Harvey Beaks, which originally was called Bad Seeds, right? I had this little drawing of Foo, and I was like, oh, he's a fun little guy. I like this. I'm just kind of doodling him. I don't know what his deal is. He's always like little woodland creatures. This is kind of fun, And then I drew this little bird, and I was like, oh, he's kind of funny. He's put a little safety helmet on him. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. He's this little nervous bird. And I kept drawing, and then the more I started playing with them, I was like, oh, I think I connect to this bird more. I understand who he is. Well, what would the little monster guy be? I was like, well, what if he had like a little sister, and they're kind of like the two who push him out of his safety zone. And I started to realize that was the dynamic of the show, and there was this whole, that was the core of it. And then I started to see that there was a show there. I didn't know what the world was. I didn't know what everything else was, but I understood who the 3 of them were and what their deal was. Same thing with Chowder. A lot of it early on was this little apprentice and his master, and originally they were magicians, and then it became cooking and chefs, and then I realized they had a little catering company, and came up with the idea of truffles and schnitzel. And when I had the 4 of them, I was like, well, that's the show, because I understood the dynamics between them and what they do, and regardless of what the stories were, I could see how they all work together.
Yeah, I think that's a really good thing to...
Yeah.
Because if you're pitching a show, you're basically saying, what's something that I could make 52 stories of?
That's true.
Right?
That's true.
And to have that many stories, it's really about who are these people, and what's their situation, and how do they feel about each other, and what can I explore. Every show is different and has different kinds of stories and all that. But I think people tune in, like I know I tune in. I tune in because I like the characters. I like who they are and how they interact,
right.
I like how they deal with problems. I like how they deal with each other, those kinds of things.
Yeah. Brian Animations 02 asks, do you still draw on your own time while show running?
I really don't.
Yeah.
I don't draw much anymore. I used to draw a lot more, but I don't, it's like I said earlier, I would draw to tell stories well, I tell the stories that through the work, so I just find that I don't draw much. Occasionally I'll doodle a little bit, but I used to doodle a whole lot more, and I don't know if it's just getting older or what, but like I'll spend more time doing other things like painting little miniatures and playing board games and other stuff like that. Yeah, I don't draw like I used to.
You do love board games. We haven't really talked about that.
That's true.
I love board games.
You're a big board game enthusiast.
Yeah. Oh,
you have an impressive collection, I gotta say.
Yeah, it's taken over my life.
I remember your Tumblr posts.
Yeah.
What do you like about it? What draws you to it?
There's a couple of things. One is obviously I like the social aspect.
Mm-hmm.
I like getting together with my friends and hanging out. It's the same reason people like poker night and things like that, right? Yeah. It's an excuse to see my friends, to see people that I enjoy spending time with, and having fun. The other thing I really like, I like the tactile nature of games, like holding cards and rolling dice and moving little things around a board, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I like the art on them.
Oh yeah, there's some really cool stuff.
It's just the physicality of it. There's something really fun. And then I really like the puzzly nature of it. It's like the part of me that likes to solve puzzles. It's sort of like, how do I get points? How do I do this efficiently? How do I get from point A to point B as fast as I can using the tools that I have? That's really satisfying and fun to me. Mm-hmm. And then there's different games for different things. Like, there's werewolf type games, which are fun to play with people and like lie to their faces. And, because I don't normally get to lie
manipulate
or
your
let
friends.
myself lie. But when you do it in a game, it's kind of fun because you know that it'll be over soon and everyone will be okay. You know what I mean?
Maybe they will. That's a good.
Well, yeah.
That's a good way to those games.
But I like a game that gives me permission to sort of role play and have fun that way for a little bit.
Totally.
But it's also like people like wanting to play Dungeons and Dragons because that's like too much role play for me. I like a little more structure.
Yeah.
I like rules and I like systems.
I mean, D&D has a lot of systems, but I know what you mean because I'm the same.
And I like something that I can finish in an hour and a half.
That's the bigger thing. D&D is a commitment, and I can't.
It's a commitment. I'm not against it in theory. I love it in theory. I'd rather in an evening play 2 or 3 games.
Yeah.
Have a good time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
there's shorter versions of it too, like different types of.
But it's kind of a lifestyle. I think you really have to commit to it. And
and
like I said, I kind of prefer things that have a little more structure.
Yeah.
No,
because otherwise I'll go off the rails.
Yeah. No, I feel that.
And I'll just go for comedy. Do you know what I mean? Like,
that's what I always do too.
I
like to just fuck things up.
Terrible.
And it's like anytime I'm trying to play D&D with people, everyone's trying to like, okay, well, I'm gonna check the room and I'm like, I throw a chair into the middle of the room. Let's see what happens.
Exactly.
And then it's like, Gene, and I'm like, we're having fun, right? Like this is supposed to be fun.
Yeah, but that's the thing. So yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean,
it does.
Yeah, but that's what I really do like about games. They're just really fun to me. I know this is going to sound dumb. I like reading rules. I like learning rules to new games and teaching people new games. I like so that.
Funny.
Yeah.
I'm very anal, I guess.
V and I developed a this is years ago, but we developed a like really bare bones D&D with our Loud House friends, most of whom I think have been on the show at this point. And it was just like we came up with a stupid character, and we would just like what items are you carrying, and I think that might have been it. And we just like spent the night just like figuring out what the adventure is that they were all going on, and it was so fun. It was so stupid and so fun. V had this like skateboarding like goblin that went off on like a side quest apart from everyone else and was like hanging out with some teenagers in the back of like a convenience store or some shit. And it was like, V, what are you doing? Get back to the party. It was just like, just having a good time.
I love the lizards.
That was the most like fun D&D thing I've ever done because it was just dumb. Let's see. What was your, hold on. At Fictionist12 asked, who was your favorite character that you voiced in Jellystone?
Oh, my favorite?
Yeah.
Favorites are hard for me.
Okay.
I guess Boo Boo? Although Doggy Daddy's really fun.
You do a really good Doggy Daddy.
Yeah, they're both, I mean, both of those guys are really fun.
Yeah. Yeah, that show had really good voice acting.
I think because anytime I get to do a crazy rant, it's really fun, and Doggy Daddy's gotten some fun rants.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the booger in the cereal rant
The
was
booger.
really fun.
I
want to get that going. Hashtag booger in the cereal.
Booger in the
Gotta get that.
cereal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of the stuff we've already kind of answered in some way. So I'd love to ask about your future goals that you have in mind.
My future goals. Well, kind of more of the same, I guess. Like I'm working on a couple of shows in development right now that are really different, and I like that. Like I like the idea of not repeating myself. You know, Jellystone is extremely familiar territory to me. It's
by design.
11-minute comedy, and I've been doing that forever, and I love it, and it's awesome. But it's also, it'd be nice to stretch different muscles. So I'm kind of developing a couple shows that are very different than these.
That's cool.
Which could be really cool.
I
mean, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's always a gamble.
You know,
I'm really excited to see that. I was going to ask one more thing, and I forgot to ask earlier. Do you feel like the process of getting a show or even working on a show has shifted from when you started to now? And like, what's different about it?
Well, there's definitely more. I mean, I think streaming has opened up the floodgates to lots more shows being greenlit, which is really good because it means a lot more people are getting opportunities to make shows, different types of creators, different voices. You know, back in the day, Nick, Disney, Cartoon Network, they'd pick up like 2 new shows a year. So there wasn't a lot of opportunity to really take chances on stuff. So I think that's something that's changed. I don't think the process has really changed. I mean, at least not from what I've seen. It's still pretty similar. I think the biggest difference is something we touched on earlier, which is people are getting opportunities who didn't necessarily come in through the normal channels because they just put their art up online. And it's kind of a nice decentralization to the fact that it's a good way to discover artists, and you don't have to go through certain schools, you don't have to go through certain processes to get into animation.
Yeah, that's a big part of the show's mission statement, I think, is just like showing how it's possible for anybody to come in if they put their work out there and they make the effort.
Exactly. That's why I always tell people, it's like, doesn't matter. And I don't care where people went to school. I don't care if they went to school. All I care is like, what's your work? How's your work, and what do you like to work with? I always tell people, it's like, you got to be nice, you got to be good, and you got to be fast.
Yeah.
Do you still
like those are the 3 things?
Or pick 2, right? It's like
pick 2, but
yeah,
then you're gonna have to be amazing at those 2. You know,
I've heard the pick 2 a lot, and it's like that's a low bar. But
I'd rather have all 3.
Yeah, it'd be good to have all 3.
And to me, that's the thing people don't realize. There's a lot of people who do fit all 3. So I'm always going to pick someone who has all 3 versus someone who only has 2.
Yeah.
If you're an amazing artist and you're nice, but you just can't get your work done on time,
that's tough.
That's gonna be a problem.
It's a pipeline.
And if you're super nice and you work really hard, but the work isn't there, that's gonna be hard too.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Carl, what do you want to plug?
Well,
plug your show.
I guess people should watch Jellystone on HBOMax and Cartoon Network starting in September.
Yeah, it's really good.
It's a super fun show, and we're all super proud of it, and we had a lot of fun making it, and hopefully we'll get a chance to make some more.
I hope so.
Because there are characters that I still want to do. Certain future characters.
Yeah, there was lots of questions about
characters and
getting
crossovers.
X, Y, or Z, and it's like, well, hopefully we'll have a chance to do that.
Yeah, I mean, here, I always said my plan was if the show went long enough, we would cover everybody that we legally could. There's characters that I want to do that we just couldn't fit into season 1, just because we can only do so much. That if we go into season 2, I would love to bring in certain other characters, but it's. We want to see them as much as everyone else wants to see them. Let me put it that way.
Sure.
I mean, they may not be the way you want to see them, and I'm sorry about that, but we'll do our best.
Yeah. Well, cool.
You know, like you're drawing Secret Squirrel. We got a fun idea for Secret Squirrel.
Yes.
Really fun idea for him. I would love to bring him in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Everyone's got their favorites too. It's really funny. Everyone loves Choo Choo right now.
Yeah, that's so funny to me. I'm like, what? Okay.
Yeah. I was saying earlier, I have a friend who loves Yucca Yucca, of all characters.
Yeah.
So why not?
Okay.
Why not? Shout out to Eric Badur.
I mean, I'm super proud of how Jabberjaw turned out. I know that she's kind of divisive to a lot of people because they're like, oh, it's not the classic Jabberjaw, but I feel like I really like her character.
The spirit's the same.
I like where she ended up. I like what she brings to the table. And,
yeah.
You know, it's and because it is essentially a new character, it's nice. Yeah, and I think you're right. It's the spirit that's the same.
Yeah, she's just a dopey. Jabberjaw is just a dopey character who has
big, loud.
Yeah, big, loud, but has a big heart, and that's Jabberjaw.
From having worked on Thundercats, I can tell that fandoms do not like change.
No,
no, they do not.
Just people in general do not like change.
Well, yeah. So
unfortunately.
Yeah, and I mean, I knew going in that was going to be a thing, but it's made me really happy to see how much that more people have embraced it than have turned away from it.
Oh, that's great. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So that was a really nice feeling. It's like I was prepared for the
backlash.
I don't like this.
Yeah.
But I don't think I was quite prepared for how much people really are liking it. Which, I mean, that's nice. I want that. Obviously, you make the show because you want people to like it.
Yeah.
But I was more bracing for the punch, seeing like the Thundercats reaction.
The CalArts style.
I was ready for that. Like,
No, it had a really good response. I mean, I worked on it. I saw all the pitches. I had to work on all the animatics, and I still watched the entire first season, which I don't really watch kids' cartoons anymore. And like,
I don't either.
Yeah, and it was great.
It
was. I was like, man, Carl really pulled it out. Like, I feel like the final result was elevated so much further than I thought it was going to be. So.
Oh, so much fun.
I'm sure, but it shows.
And I'm so sick of these episodes. But
well,
yeah, like,
people will like them.
I mean, you can't go wrong with Ego's music, also.
Oh, yeah.
Jeez.
Actually, hold on. Pedro Boli asked, why does the Harvey Beaks theme make me tear up with joy?
Because it's so damn sweet.
It's just cute.
That's so true.
It's so sweet. But you know what? That's good, because that was the goal of the show.
I remember watching the pilot, and I was like, wow, this is so good. I was just like, yeah, I think I teared up a little bit because the music and like that, like just everything, like the pacing was so good. It all just kind of came together so nicely for like that very last scene when he's finally just
thanks.
I don't know, it was a very emotional watch for me. And
it was interesting because that was the goal of what I was trying to do. It's like coming off of Chowder, I was like, let me see if I can do something that feels more emotional and that feels sweeter and that feels a little more touching, but still has comedy in it. And so it was a conscious decision to approach the show with that point of view. So it was a really nice to do that. It still makes me sad that they never did anything with it, but I'm so proud of that show.
I feel like it'll have a second life,
I hope. I just want people to see it.
Yeah,
Like we put all that work into it. I just want people to be able to see it and enjoy it.
It feels like a show that will definitely have like this second wave of people like, remember Harvey Beaks? And then it'll like become a big thing. Because it deserves
we'll
it.
See.
Yeah. Well,
we'll see.
That's the end of this creative block. Thanks to Carl for being our guest and sharing his story.
Thank you guys for having me. It was super fun. Sorry I couldn't get my pen working.
No problem.
No problem.
And thanks to your listeners. Follow us on Twitter. It's at Creative Block, creative without the vowels, where we ask for drawing prompts and questions to ask our guests. Huge thanks to my sister Clemens for editing the podcast.
And if you love our show, then support us on Patreon. Becoming a patron gets you early access to interviews as well as bonus episodes. Click the link in the description of this episode. I've been your host, Gene.
And I was V. Keeping creative, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.